And now joining us for more on the aftermath of the recent Israel-Gaza conflict, we have former head of the military intelligence and senior researcher with the Institute for National Security Studies, Brigadier General Dr. Meir Elran. Israeli author of Industry of Lies and journalist with Yediot Ahronot, Ben-Dror Yemini. The founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman. And via Skype, we have the director of the Center for Near East Policy, David Bedein. Thank you all very much for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So to begin, I'll actually start with you, Dr. Elran.
Please.
How would you characterize what occurred over the last few days, and would you agree with Israel's response to it?
Well, first of all, I'd say that it's more of the same, a little bit more so, in the sense that we've seen such incidents before, such rounds, so-called rounds before, unfortunately, too many of those. And more so because I think it has been somewhat more severe in terms of its magnitude and in terms of its effect, mostly with regard to the casualties that we have experienced. I mean, 4 people in 36 hours is quite a number in terms of comparison with the previous incidents.
Sure.
So this is quite grave on one hand. I think it's not really necessary as far as Israel is concerned. And
What do you mean by that?
I think that Israel doesn't really need those rounds again and again. I mean, it doesn't play it into our hands. It's not really.
So what is Israel supposed to do to
Well,
prevent that
that's
from
of course
occurring?
another question. There is a short-range answer and a long-range answer. In terms of the short range, I think we have to be very tough on the Hamas in terms of the military response. And I'm not sure that we are, or sufficiently so. That's one thing. But I think the most important thing is to discuss the more long-range aspects of this whole story with Hamas. The big question is really, what do we want, what Israel wants as far as Hamas is concerned? And I think that if Israel wants stability, tranquility, and some kind of a non-violence, which endures for a long period of time, there is no other way for us to deal with that apart from a strategic plan for the reconstruction of Gaza.
Are you serious?
I'm very serious,
serious?
Martin. Thank you very much. Yeah, but I'll tell you later why I'm serious. But
Well, okay. So you know, how would you respond then? Because it seems
The solution for Gaza is not the reconstruction of Gaza, but the deconstruction of Gaza.
Are you serious, Martin?
Yes, quite serious. Because
Okay.
in the long run, you talked about the long run. In the long run, there will either be Arabs in Gaza or Jews in the Negev. There won't be both. If anyone had told you...
How do you know that, by the way?
If anyone had told you
Yeah.
in 2005 that what you have in Gaza was what you would have, you would have been considered crazy. They would have said you were a fearmonger. 700 rockets within 2 days on Israel? Really? You know, the problem is with the Israeli, the Israeli policy on Palestine has been misguided for 3 decades. Everyone says it's a complicated problem. It's not a complicated problem. It's a very simple problem. That when I say it's simple, I don't mean that it's easy to solve. In fact, the difficulty is rooted in its brutal simplicity. It's either them or us. They are not prospective peace partners. They are
I
implacable
remember
enemies.
people said that about Egypt
Yes, and
for many years.
Yes, and it's
the truth of the matter is that we were wrong then, and we are.
we weren't wrong then. We weren't wrong then.
Of course,
and
we
we're not
were
wrong today.
very
well,
wrong.
Well, I want to turn to Ben-Dror here. Let's hear your take on this.
First of all, we have to admit that we failed. We failed in Gaza. I mean, looking at what happened in the last 10 years, and we have to bear in mind one thing. I mean, it's
Well,
not.
the last
It's
15
not. Wait,
years.
please. It's not a failure of Israel. It's a failure of the whole West against the global jihad. If we look back even to Russia in Afghanistan, they failed. If we look at Russia with Chechnya, they failed. If we look at Egypt in North Sinai, they failed. Because we did not, in the West, we did not develop the means how to fight and how to defeat this kind of global jihad. So it's coming again and again. I think that comparing to all the other battlefields, I mean, it should be easier with Gaza because it's under siege and so on and so on. And yet we are failing again and again. Why? Why we are failing? Because it's not really clear. It's not really clear that Israel is the just side. I mean, we failed in the how to call it, even the propaganda field, and all the demonstration against Israel, they always block us from completing the mission, and we are failing again and again, and we could have failed again if a new round, a real new round, would begin.
Okay, now I want to turn to our Skype, David Bedein. Hello.
Thank you very much.
Please, yeah.
Our agency deals with UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. We retain the services of 4 Palestinian Arab journalists in Gaza. 83% of the Gazans live in UNRWA camps. Our agency already supplied the United States government, the Israeli government, other governments with the fact that UNRWA was taken over by Hamas back in 2009, and every few years it continues. The Workers' Association, Teachers Association. We gave the precise lists of the teachers who are members of Hamas and the workers members of Hamas. The Israeli government ignored it. The Israeli government could demand their firing. They don't do so. That will be the subject, perhaps, of the next investigation in the Investigation Commission of Israel. Why are they not being fired? Why? Now, my colleague here from Israeli intelligence talks about rebuilding Gaza. The people there, they only have one solution in mind, and that is to build their homes in Sderot, in Ashkelon, Ashdod, because that's what's being taught in the schools, and that's what's being indoctrinated into them. And the Israeli government, which according to Israeli law, this was taught to us by Shlomo Lahat, the first Kogod coordinator back in after '67. The Israeli government has a responsibility to check every school book and every school teacher, and they ignore it, and they won't do it. We're talking about basics here, basic issues towards a solution. You first of all do what you can to take the power away from UNRWA. Instead, certain intelligent people in the Israeli intelligence say that they should work with UNRWA as the agency to work towards a solution. And if this weren't the absolute theater of the absurd, to rig in Qatar, the ultimate Islamic radical agency, to supply funds and supervision of the education.
Sure.
I thought this was not the Twilight Zone, but perhaps it is.
All right. Well, what kind of role does Ramadan play on the fact that we have a tentative ceasefire today? Because
it's not. Maybe
they can tomorrow morning open up fire. Please do not use the word terms.
For lack of a better word, end of hostilities.
Okay.
Well, all right. Well, there's a current stall in hostilities then, but. So what role does Ramadan play with that? Are we going to see a resumption of hostilities within the next 24 hours?
Unfortunately, I think we may, witness another round during Ramadan, even though I think that we should also relate to the Palestinians in Gaza as people. And they have their own needs and they have their own, problems, etc. They have a problem. They need gas. They need electricity. They need medicines, and they need also.
Why haven't they got it?
And just 1 second. And they also need the reconstruction. So, I mean, again, looking at the longer future, I think that as long as there is no hope for the Gazans, they would do what we heard here before. In other words, they will be more hostile, they will be more radical, they will be more active, and they will be more violent. If we want to have a cessation of the hostilities, not to have again and again rockets launched against us, we have to think about a solution to the problem. Not necessarily a final solution for the problem, but at least a temporary solution. And now we are failing to do that.
At some stage, we have to stop insisting that the world is flat. The problem in Gaza is not that they had no money. Gaza was one of the highest recipients per capita of international aid. Throwing more money at the problem is only going to make it worse because the money is taken by Hamas, and instead of using the cement to build kindergartens and hospitals, they use it to build tunnels. I'm all for giving the Palestinians hope. For giving them hope, you have to give them relocation loans and allow them, as many of them want to do, find better and more secure lives in third-party countries outside the cycle of violence.
We cannot ignore the fact that actually the Hamas was offered by the Quartet, by the EU, again and again, We don't need any more siege, but you have to comply the peace, the previous agreements and so on. They always rejected. They always did not want it. So in the blame game, something that we, Israel, did not succeed in explaining, in the blame game, it's all their, it's their responsibility, because they do not want peace. And we have to bear in mind one more thing. Wherever global jihad is prevailing, whether they are in control, whether they are fighting for control, it's always bloodshed and destruction.
So what do you suggest?
We have to bear,
What do you suggest?
we have to bear it. But we have the Israelis, we have a total failure, because you see so many demonstrations against who? Against Israel, not against the Hamas that is sending kids with swastika flags and with that kind of stuff. Not against the Hamas that is calling officially in Al-Manar channel, which is the official channel of the Hamas, to kill all the Jews until the last one of them. I mean, we totally.
All right, well,
it's a total failure, and we have to just to remember it.
all right, well, gentlemen, as always, unfortunately, we could talk about this for a lot
Well,
longer.
I have one question from my colleague from Israeli intelligence. Is there one Gazan who is willing to rebuild his house and give up his home in Ashkelon? You tell me.
Well, I'm very sorry, but we really must move on. We've run out of time. But thank you so much again for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
David Bedein,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Meir Elran, Ben-Dror Yemini,
Thank
and
you
Dr.
for having
Sherman.
us.
Thank you all very much for coming in.